Long ago, during the reign of the Persian Empire, a powerful king ruled over a vast kingdom. His name was King Ahasuerus. His empire stretched across many lands and many peoples. At the center of his kingdom stood the magnificent city of Susa, the royal capital. It was a place of marble halls, golden pillars, and beautiful gardens, where nobles and officials gathered to celebrate the greatness of the empire. Among the many people living in this kingdom were the Jews. They were descendants of those who had once been carried away from their homeland into exile. Even in a foreign land, they continued to live quietly, keeping their traditions and their faith in God. In the city of Susa lived a Jewish man named Mordecai. Mordecai was wise, faithful, and deeply devoted to God. He worked near the king's gate and often sat at the king's gate, where important matters of the kingdom were discussed. Mordecai had a young cousin named Esther. Her Hebrew name was Hadassah, but she was known to many as Esther. Esther had lost both her parents when she was still a child, so Mordecai took her in and raised her as his own daughter. Under Mordecai's loving care, Esther grew into a young woman of great beauty, wisdom, and kindness. Though they lived among many nations, Mordecai often reminded Esther of who she truly was. "Never forget our people," he would say softly, "and never forget the God who watches over us." One day, something happened in the royal palace that would change everything. During a great feast, the king called for his queen, Queen Vashti,
I will not come.
but she refused to obey the king's command. Her refusal angered the king and embarrassed his advisors. After much discussion, the king made a decision. Queen Vashti would no longer be queen. Soon after, the king's servants suggested a plan. Beautiful young women from across the empire would be brought to the palace. Each one would be prepared and presented before the king, and the one who pleased him most would become the new queen. When this news spread throughout the kingdom, many young women were brought to the city of Susa. Among them was Esther. Mordecai encouraged her to go. Perhaps, he believed, God had a purpose greater than they could see. But he warned her of one important thing. "Do not reveal that you are Jewish," Mordecai said. "Wait for the right time." Esther trusted Mordecai and obeyed him. At the palace, she was placed under the care of the king's official who supervised the women. Everyone who met Esther was struck by her gentle spirit and her graceful character. She listened carefully, she treated others with kindness, and she carried herself with quiet dignity. Finally, the day came for Esther to appear before the king. She did not ask for extravagant jewels or luxurious garments. Instead, she chose humility, and when the king saw her, he was deeply pleased. Of all the women who had come before him, Esther stood out above the rest. Her beauty shone brightly, but it was her grace and kindness that captured the king's heart. So the king placed the royal crown upon her head, and Esther became the new queen. A great celebration spread throughout the empire. Feasts were held, gifts were given, and the people rejoiced. Yet even in the splendor of the palace, Esther remembered Mordecai's instruction. She did not reveal that she was Jewish, and Mordecai continued to sit at the king's gate, watching over her from afar. One day, while sitting at the gate, Mordecai overheard something troubling.
Tomorrow we strike the
Two
king.
palace guards
No
were
one will
whispering
suspect.
together. Their names were Bigthan and Teresh, and they were angry with the king. As Mordecai listened carefully, he realized something shocking. They were planning to assassinate the king. Mordecai quickly sent word to Queen Esther. Esther trusted Mordecai completely, So she told the king and gave Mordecai
Haman
the
schemes
credit for
against
the
you
warning.
and our people.
An
What?
investigation
God,
was
seize the
carried out,
conspirators at once.
and the
Yes, my
plot was
king.
confirmed. The two conspirators
Oh, no,
were
not
punished,
that. Please,
and
we
the
are
king's
innocent.
life
Silence.
was saved.
Justice will be done.
The event was recorded in the royal chronicles, but strangely, Mordecai received no reward. Still, he continued faithfully with his duties, not knowing that his loyalty would soon become very important. Not long after these events, a powerful man rose within the kingdom. His name was Haman. King Ahasuerus promoted Haman above all the other nobles. The king even commanded that everyone bow before him as a sign of honor. Whenever Haman passed through the king's gate, people bowed low before him. Everyone, except Mordecai. Mordecai refused to bow. Day after day, he remained standing.
The palace servants asked him, "Why do you disobey the king's command?" But Mordecai would not bow. Eventually, they told Haman. When Haman saw that Mordecai refused to bow, he became furious. But his anger did not stop with Mordecai. When he learned that Mordecai was a Jew, his hatred grew even deeper. And Haman made a terrible decision. He would not only punish Mordecai, he would destroy all the Jewish people. Haman went before the king with clever and deceptive words. "There is a certain people scattered throughout your kingdom," he said. "Their laws are different, and they do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the king's interest to tolerate them." Then Haman offered a large amount of silver for permission to destroy them. Without realizing the full truth, the king gave Haman his royal signet ring. "Do with the people as you wish," the king said. And so a terrible decree was written. On a certain day, all Jews in the empire were to be destroyed. Men, women, and children. Their possessions would be taken as plunder. When Mordecai heard the news, he was devastated. He tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes. He cried out loudly in the streets.
All my people,
Across the
darkness,
empire,
we
Jewish
cry out in our
families
sorrow.
mourned. They fasted. They wept. They prayed. A terrible shadow had fallen over their people. Inside the palace, Esther heard about Mordecai's grief. She was deeply concerned. At first, she sent clothes for him to wear, but he refused. Instead, Mordecai sent a message explaining everything. He showed Esther the decree ordering the destruction of the Jews, and then he sent her a powerful challenge. "Do not think that because you are in the palace, you will escape. If you remain silent, deliverance will come from another place, but you and your family will perish." Then Mordecai spoke the words that would echo through history. "Who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Esther understood the danger. Anyone who approached the king without permission could be put to death, and the king had not called her for 30 days. Yet the fate of her people rested in her hands. So Esther made a brave decision. "Gather all the Jews in Susa," she said. "Fast for me for 3 days. My servants and I will fast as well." Then she spoke words of great courage. "After that, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish."
If I perish, I perish.
On the 3rd day, Esther dressed in her royal robes. With courage in her heart, she walked into the palace court. Inside the throne room, King Ahasuerus sat on his throne. When he saw Esther standing there, something remarkable happened. The king was pleased. He extended his golden scepter toward her. Her life was spared. "What is it, Queen Esther?" the king asked. "What is your request?" But Esther answered wisely. "If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come to a banquet I have prepared." And so the king and Haman attended her feast, but Esther waited. She invited them again to a second banquet the next day. Meanwhile, Haman returned home full of pride. But when he saw Mordecai still refusing to bow, his joy turned to rage. His friends suggested a cruel plan. "Build a gallows," they said. "In the morning, ask the king to hang Mordecai on it." Haman loved the idea, and he ordered the gallows to be built. But that very night, the king could not sleep, so he ordered the royal records to be read. As the servant read aloud, they came to the story of Mordecai saving the king's life. The king was surprised. "What honor was given to Mordecai?" he asked. "Nothing," the servants replied. Just then, Haman entered the court. Before Haman could speak, the king asked him a question. What should be done for the man the king delights to honor? Haman thought the king meant him, so he described a grand celebration, royal robes, the king's horse, and a public parade of honor. The king smiled. "Excellent," he said.
Go at once
"Do this
and
for
honor
Mordecai." Haman was stunned, but he had no choice. That day, the proud
Look,
Haman
the king
led
honors
Mordecai through the
Haman
city,
leads him. What
proclaiming
irony!
his honor.
This is the king's
And
command.
Haman returned home humiliated. Later, the king and Haman attended Esther's second banquet. Once again, the king asked, "What is your request?" This time, Esther spoke boldly. "If I have found favor in your sight, grant me my life and the lives of my people." The king was shocked. "Who would dare do such a thing?" he asked.
The enemy is
Esther
this
pointed
wicked
to
Haman.
"The enemy is this wicked Haman." The king rose in anger, and soon Haman was seized by the guards. He was executed on the very gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. But the story did not end there. A new decree was written. The Jewish people were now allowed to defend themselves, and when the appointed day came, they were victorious. The Jewish people were
Rejoice, for our
saved.
deliverance is here.
Mordecai was honored throughout the kingdom, and Queen Esther continued to rule with wisdom and courage. And so, the story of Esther reminds us that courage can change history. A young orphan girl became a queen. A faithful man refused to bow to evil. And when the moment of danger came, Esther chose bravery over fear. Because sometimes we are placed exactly where we are for such a time as this.
And that brings us to the end of today's Bible story. The Bible is full of powerful stories that teach us about a whole lot. Each story reminds us that God's Word is alive and continues to guide us every day. Thank you for watching Bible Story TV, where the stories of the Bible come to life. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell notifications so you never miss another story from the Bible. And remember, God's Word is a light for our path and a guide for our lives. We'll see you next time on Bible Story TV.